Hey guys, sorry about that 1 month hiatus. We had some things going on, so it was pretty difficult for us to make videos for a little bit there. But we're back and we are here with our top 50 movies of 2017.
Yeah, and we made a poll of the best movies that we watched in the year 2017, and we're each gonna be making our own list of our favorite movies from 2017 from this poll that we have made.
So guys, before we start off our list, we want to go ahead and give a shout out to some movies that didn't quite make the cut, but were still really good movies in our list of honorable mentions. Movies such as Personal Shopper, Wonder Woman, Spider-Man Homecoming, All the Money in the World, Molly's Game, Split, Detroit, Coco, It, Wind River, and the second half of Thor Ragnarok.
And now we're on to our top 15 list, and I do want to say that some of these movies we've ranked the same. So when that happens, we're going to be talking about them at the same time. And with that said, our number 15 is actually, we both put The Disaster Artist. We're both huge fans of the movie The Room, so we were pretty excited when this movie was coming out. And what surprised both of us, and what we both liked about this, The Disaster Artist, was that it wasn't just a mockery of The Room. They didn't just try to make jokes about the movie The Room. They actually made a film that was driven by drama rather than jokes.
Yeah, and then also just this movie was just very well acted, especially by James Franco. And we've all seen the trailers from this movie, The Disaster Artist, and it kind of just goes up from there. Like what you saw, if you liked it, it just gets even better. And then he directed it and all that stuff. His method acting was just fantastic for this movie. Number 14. Detroit had my heart pounding from probably about, I'm gonna say 20 to 30 minutes in, all the way to the end of the movie. This movie was so claustrophobic. It all took place mostly in one house, and it's a true story. And the acting in this movie is just so great, and the direction, because without the great direction that it had, I wouldn't have been able to feel how I felt during this movie. And without the acting, I wouldn't have been able to connect to any of these characters and felt bad for them and actually, wanted them to get through this all. But it was just so amazing how this entire movie was put together.
Wind River had Jeremy Evans. Jeremy Evans? Who the heck is Jeremy Evans? Wind River has Jeremy Renner and Elizabeth Olsen, two Avengers, and it's just a great and somber mystery movie about a young Native American woman who was murdered on Native American grounds.
Number 13. Now say what you will about Robert Pattinson, but Robert Pattinson is actually quite a good actor. I'm not going to even lie. Because, we saw him in Twilight, and, we don't have that great a thing to say about him from that movie. But he actually, if you watch this movie, Good Time, he actually does a really good job in this movie.
Yeah, even from the very beginning, he just seems like a completely different person. Like his voice, the way he looks, everything about him doesn't scream Edward to me from Twilight. It's just a completely different person.
Yeah, his voice sounds completely different, and it's really amazing. And just aside from him, because I don't want to just bring up Robert Pattinson, you think that's the reason why we like this movie so much, but just the whole movie is just very well written, and the story is so interesting. Even times whenever not a lot is happening, you kind of feel like things are still happening, because the whole story just revolves around this guy and how police are chasing after him, and you're kind of just waiting at any moment for something to happen. Number 12.
Get Out came out pretty early on this year, but it definitely had one of the most unique and interesting storylines. And Jordan Peele, for being known as a comedian, making this movie, which was a thriller and drama, he did a fantastic job.
Yeah, and especially since this movie, it really was one of the most original horror movies I've seen, because it really is a horror movie. It had some really creepy scenes that kind of just chill me to the bone a lot of times. And one thing I just want to add for the end of this is the fact that whoever made the trailer for this movie, and I said in our review, needs to never make another trailer again. Because whenever I saw this trailer, I had absolutely no interest in seeing it. It really looked extremely stupid to me. But after hearing about all the buzz from it, I had to go see it, and I checked it out, and it really is one of my favorite movies of the entire year. Number 11. The Post is a movie that I really wasn't that interested in going into it, but after coming out of it, I was so happy that I saw this movie. It had obvious terrific performances from Tom Hanks and Meryl Streep, but the other actors, kind of less known actors, they did terrific as well. And the storyline of this movie was just so intriguing and so wonderful to watch. And the direction from Steven Spielberg, all of it mixed together, just came together for this amazing and fully complete movie.
Dunkirk wasn't one of my favorite Christopher Nolan movies, but my goodness, was it an experience at the cinema. Just the desperation of these soldiers being trapped in World War II, and just them trying to get home, and everything that's going on around them, the sounds, the visuals, everything about it was just so moving while watching. It was definitely worth watching in the theaters. Brittany, I have to sit next to the guy.
Number 10. This year marked M. Night Shyamalan's complete comeback with Split. I mean, a few years ago we had a movie called The Visit, which was pretty good, but it had quite a bit of flaws. But with Split, it was just such a terrific movie. My heart was pounding through several parts of this movie. It was so creepy, so scary. And then the acting from James McAvoy, my goodness, that was ridiculous. I mean, he's not going to win an Oscar for it, and he really definitely deserves at least a nomination. Unfortunately, it's probably not going to happen for him. But man, going through that many types of characters was ridiculous, and it was just beautiful and wonderful to see.
It's pretty much a given anytime Pixar releases a movie that's going to be great, and Coco is definitely no exception from that. From the storytelling to the beautiful animation to the voice work, everything about this just made me, it was just such an emotional ride.
Number 9. Now, although Zach talked about this a little bit, one thing I want to bring up about this movie is the fact that this movie was not very character driven. There wasn't a lot of times where the characters were talking with each other and you get to learn more about them. In fact, you almost don't get to learn almost anything about these characters. But it just mixes so well with the movie, because obviously in the war you're not going to have a lot of times, especially in this scenario, where you just decide to sit down and start talking with each other. I mean, they could have done it, it could have worked, but what they did was just such an ambitious and such a risky choice to not have any type of character moments, but have it still work out at the same time.
Tom Hanks, Meryl Streep, Steven Spielberg, enough said. No, but really, Tom Hanks and Meryl Streep aside, the whole cast, like Marquez said, everybody was so great. Everybody had a great performance. Even a character that was in the movie for 5 to 10 minutes, I wouldn't consider them a weakling, because there were no weaklings in this movie. And not just their performances, the story writing. Now, I don't know much about the Vietnam War or about politics that much, so the beginning sort of drug for me. But once the plot started rolling, it just became such a fascinating and just a suspenseful movie to watch.
Number 8. Molly's Game is definitely a different type of movie. It had wonderful acting from Jessica Chastain and Idris Elba, and very good directing from first-time director Aaron Sorkin, who usually is the writer of movies. And the one thing I say about this movie, especially in the beginning is so fast-paced, and it's weird because they have it to where they add in so much information that you need to make sure that you listen to. In a lot of movies, that may become a hindrance to it, and it may become where the beginning just feels kind of weak. But the way they do it is just so well done, and it's so seamless, and the whole movie is just like this. And there's a lot of times where there's a lot of smaller actors in this movie that kind of pop in and pop out, but seems to be a reason for it, and you understand why they pop in and pop out like that. And so the whole movie is just so well done and so seamless and so amazingly directed.
Blade Runner 2049 might not be my number one movie of 2017, but it's definitely one of the most visually pleasing movies I've ever seen in my entire life, and that's not an exaggeration. Because not once in this movie did I think, oh, that's obviously CGI, or nowhere in this movie did anything look fake or that was out of place. And the color palettes were definitely a big part of why this movie was just so visually pleasing. and the storytelling, the acting from Ryan Gosling and Harrison Ford, everything was just came together really well.
Number 7.
Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri was one of the saddest movies I've seen this year, because you walk into this movie, or you watch it, and you're expecting, especially from the very beginning, you're expecting almost like some kind of mystery or drama, and going through the whole movie trying to figure out who murdered and raped this woman's daughter. But it's not that at all, and I'm not going to go into anything, but it's so much more than that. It's so much more. It goes so much more into all these characters, and it goes into the life of a lot of characters you don't really expect movies to do, because usually in movies they'll just go into the main character story, maybe a few side characters, but it fully goes into these side characters' life to where it almost feels like there's no side characters. And the direction and the writing of this movie is really ambitious to go for that, especially trying to fit it all into one movie, trying to fit all these stories, but they all blend together. They're all there for a reason, to make you care about these characters for a reason. And it's just so amazing to see these ambitious and these risky decisions now.
Like how I said Dunkirk was an experience at the theater, it was also a different kind of experience at the theater, because it was one of the creepiest movies I've seen in a long time. I know a lot of people are complaining that they have too much comedy in it, but I felt like the comedy made the movie feel more authentic, because the main characters were a bunch of middle school kids, so they're not going to be like super serious all the time. So it made the characters feel more real than if they would have just been serious the whole time. And it had some of the most iconic, creepy moments. There's so many, I can't even count on my fingers the different times I was scared in this movie. And Bill Skarsgård did fantastic as Pennywise, and I really can't wait to see what he does in the sequel. And this was just a great adaptation of a Stephen King novel.
Number 6.
A Ghost Story is probably the most different and original movie I saw this year. Definitely, maybe even one of the most original movies and most weirdest movies I've seen in a long time. But the weirdness and the originality and just the decisions that were made really paid off for this movie. This movie has a lot of scenes that kind of just sit there and kind of let you just sit in the moment and realize what you're watching. You're not just watching a movie, you're watching people's lives. You're watching these people's making decisions. And there's even this ridiculous 4.5 minute pie eating scene, but it's just so interesting and so cool. And the movie A Ghost Story, it's not a horror movie at all, and it doesn't even really pay attention to the living characters as so much the ghosts, because a ghost story. And it's just such a beautiful movie, and I love this movie so much.
Three Billboards Outside of Ebbing, Missouri was definitely a surprise movie for me, because I honestly had no idea what it was about, and the title is definitely a eye catcher. But so going into it, I didn't know what to expect, but it honestly was a pretty great movie. Of course, Frances McDormand deserves a lot of praise for what she did with her character, and I'm sure she's gonna get nominated. But one of my favorite parts about this movie is how they handled Woody Harrelson's character. I'm not gonna go into spoilers, but there's something about it that I just loved.
Number 5.
Logan was not only one of my favorite movies of the year, but it probably is my favorite Marvel movie of all time. This movie really pushed it, and it really needed to do it, because we've seen all these X-Men movies, and not to say none of them were good, but none of them fully got to that extent of what they could have been, especially Wolverine. And you fully get to see Wolverine's character. You fully get to see what Wolverine is supposed to be with this movie. And you just, as an old man Logan, you get to see just all this darkness and deepness in the story. And Daphne Keane as X-23 was just phenomenal. Her acting was so great. The one thing I was scared about was her acting, because in a lot of movies with kids, and I've said this so many times, it gets kind of scary, because sometimes kids are just casted and people just feel like, oh, they're kids, they can just act like whatever. But this movie really took its audience seriously with all of their decisions.
A Ghost Story was for sure the most ambitious movie of 2017, because, okay, The idea of taking the best actor from last year, Casey Affleck, who won for Manchester by the Sea, and have him play a sheet ghost for the almost the entire movie. And that's actually Casey Affleck under the sheet. We looked it up. And have little to no dialogue throughout the entire movie is just such an ambitious goal for a movie. But it paid off for them tremendously because, like Marquez said, there's even a scene where the main actress eats a pie for 4.5 minutes in silence, and there's literally no dialogue in that scene. It's literally just her eating the pie. But you can see how she's like having to deal with the death of her husband and just the depression that's settling in on her. And the rest of the movie is just about loneliness and just having to see time go by and him not being able to change anything about what's going on around him. And it's just a great movie that I would recommend. But I do have to warn that there is little to no dialogue if you go in and see this movie.
Number 4.
Now, on the flip side of the coin from Ghost Story, Baby Driver was one of the most fun, exciting movies of 2017. The way they blended the music, because this movie's full of music, the way they blended it with the movements of the actors, the way they blended the action with the serious drama, everything about it just blended so well.
Yeah, and then the acting was so terrific from everybody, even a few people. But Ansel Elgort, I think is his name. I've only seen him in a few movies, and I've in the past I've noticed he's a good actor. But in this movie, he's so quiet, and even though it seems like acting is a lot of talking, but it was just kind of proven wrong by a Ghost Story. But this movie, he really pulls off this silence, and there's just something about his mannerisms that really works for his character. And if there's one actor I really want to bring out for this movie is Jamie Foxx. Now, I'm not gonna lie, and I'm sorry to all those Jamie Foxx lovers out there, I have never liked a role of Jamie Foxx's. I always felt like his acting was really bad, even in Django. But in this movie, you can really tell he's really pulling his weight. He really does so well in this movie. Just everything about this movie is great, especially the direction, always from Edgar Wright. The great little subtle details at all times.
Especially there's a scene at the beginning of the movie where Baby, the main character, he's walking to the store to get coffee, I think, and the song that's playing in the background, the lyrics are like in the wall on the background as he's walking, and some are in the trees. The subtle things that make this movie great.
Yeah, and Edgar Wright is just always such a great director, and this movie is no exception to that.
Number 3.
The new Planet of the Apes trilogy is probably one of my favorite trilogies of all time, considering the fact that they pretty much kind of get, as a movie, they get better and better as they go along.
The second one, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, or Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, is probably my favorite of the trilogy. But as a movie as a whole, I think War is definitely the better of the three. And Caesar as a character, I said in our review, I honestly think he's going to be known as one of the most iconic characters in cinematic history as time goes on, because he's just such a compelling character, because he's an ape who's leading this rebellion against the humans. But at the same time, he has compassion. He still has compassion towards humans, even though he's still wary of them. He still has compassion for them. It's just so interesting to watch.
Yeah, and another thing about the War for the Planet of the Apes is that a lot of people, I'm not gonna say a lot of people, but quite a few people I saw didn't like this movie because they felt that it was a little slow, and a lot of people kind of got thrown off by the fact that there's not technically a war going all throughout this movie. There's more of one little battle scene, but the word war, I think people didn't look enough into. They kind of just looked at it at face value, which isn't enough for these kind of movies, these great films. And the word war could mean so many things. It was the war,
the internal
war between the two main characters, Caesar and Woody Harrelson's character. Because Woody Harrelson, he hated the apes, but not so much in the terms of what we think hate actually is, in a different way, which I don't want to go into detail. And then obviously, like we talked about, Caesar has this internal war with himself of he does actually love humans in a way because of his growing relationship
James Franco.
with James Franco. And then the second one, he realized humans can actually be good. So he knows that humans are good, but can he really trust it that much?
Number 2.
Lady Bird on paper might sound like a pretty generic plot, but the way that Greta Gerwig wrote the dialogue and wrote some of the scenes, she really wrote it to where it didn't over dramatize a lot of the things that normal high school movies do, and it just felt really authentic.
Yeah, and like he said, and just to add on to that, is the fact that this movie doesn't try to be anything other than what it is, nothing more. And like there's a lot of scenes in Lady Bird that kind of threw me off because I was expecting them to have scenes like that, scenes of being over dramatic and things and trying to show off their acting skills. But there was none of that because they realized that's not how people act all the time. You know,
Right.
with teenagers, they can flip one place to another. You know, it was just such a different and real film. And with Saoirse Ronan, man, Saoirse Ronan was such a fantastic actress. She is so great. I'm really looking forward to anything else she has to be in. And also, I really hope that Greta Gerwig gets nominated for director in the Oscars.
Yeah, I really hope both of them get nominated for Best Actress and
Yeah,
Best Supporting
you have Laurie Metcalf who plays the mom. You have Saoirse Ronan who plays the main character, and then you have Greta Gerwig. And I really think all three of them really do need to get nominated. Well, guys, here we are. It is time for our number one pick of 2017.
Number 1.
Blade Runner 2049 was nothing short of phenomenal. This movie was so amazing to look at. It was so visually appealing. And like Zach said, there wasn't a time where I could look at the movie and say, oh, that's CGI. I could look at it and obviously say, you know, that's probably CGI. That's all I could say. You know, and I don't want to talk too much about how visually appealing it is because that's going to be probably the most obvious part of this movie. You could look at the trailers and say this movie's going to be visually appealing. You'd never watch it. But I want to talk more about the writing elements. The dialogue in this movie is pretty fantastic. Also, Ryan Gosling. I absolutely love Ryan Gosling. Ryan Gosling seems like he's just very picky on his roles because he's starting to pick just straight up great films. And he's such a great actor too. Also, Jared Leto. Jared Leto's a good actor, I'm not gonna lie, but I haven't seen him in a lot of stuff, except for Suicide Squad, which I didn't really like his performance that much at all. But he was so good in this movie. His voice was fantastic. And then Denis Villeneuve, I've loved him for a director. I've loved him as a director ever since I saw Enemy with Jake Gyllenhaal. He's just a fantastic director. So much attention to detail and so much grittiness and so much quietness that really works. Also, there's one big thing I don't want to talk about, and it's a character that pops up in the movie. And just in case you haven't watched the trailers, I don't want to spoil it too much for you, but it's a pretty big deal what they bring up, the character they bring into this movie. But they don't actually act like it's a big deal. In a lot of movies, and I'm going to say it, even like Star Wars, with The Force Awakens, you get to see you get to see Luke Skywalker, or you get to see bring up all these different characters from the past, and they make this big deal about it because they want to make sure people know, oh, this is a big character. But in this movie, they don't do that. They kind of just, he's there, and doesn't make a big deal about it. He's just there. He's a character. He's someone who lives. He's a person. And I really have to respect this movie for that and just all the other choices this movie made.
Logan is one of the best superhero movies since The Dark Knight, and honestly one of my favorite movies in a long time. Hugh Jackman and Sir Patrick Stewart as Wolverine and Professor X, they were at their best in this movie, especially playing these two iconic and beloved characters. They were amazing. And Daphne Keane, who plays X-23. If you look at her IMDb page, you'll see that she's only been on maybe 2 telenovelas, and she hasn't been on any other major motion pictures. So this is her first movie, and she did fantastic. She hit it out of the ballpark, and I really hope they continue with her story and have her in future X-Men movies. Logan does not pull any punches, especially with the violence and the gore. But the gore isn't just over the top, and it's not just there to be there. It's there because the character of Wolverine, that's who he is, and that's what he would be like in this situation if it was real life. Especially a character that has metal claws that pop out of his knuckles. It's not going to be like a PG, clean situation. So it was very authentic and realistic. And Logan was honestly the Wolverine movie that Hugh Jackman fully deserved.
Well, guys, there it is, our top 15 movies of 2017. If you're interested, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also, comment below and tell us what your ranking is, your top movies of 2017. Or even if you disagree with us, maybe you hated some of the movies we put in this list.
And don't forget, we have social media. We have Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all at 2 Awesome Men.
And as always, thank you so much for watching, and you will see us later.